He whispered our marriage's most intimate truth to his friends. Don't worry, she always bends. Little did he know, while he was smirking, I was already sharpening the knife that would cut the strings of his control. His favorite toy was about to learn how to break the hands that played with her. His control wasn't just going to end, it was going to shatter in the most public, humiliating way possible. My name is Cassandra Vance. At 37, I design homes for a living, spaces where light, balance, and freedom are supposed to coexist. I just never realized my own marriage had become a house I didn't recognize, with walls built from my compromises and doors that only opened for his needs. The revelation came not with a slam, but a laugh. A rainy Seattle Saturday, my husband, Marcus, had his inner circle over, Brad, Jason, and Leo, for whiskey and golf highlights. I was in my upstairs studio tweaking blueprints for a client who wanted her kitchen to feel like a sanctuary. The irony wasn't lost on me later. Our vintage home has these beautiful, treacherous air vents. They carried their voices up to me with crystal clarity. Brad was venting about his wife's new boundary phase, refusing to host his poker nights. It's like she doesn't get it's my stress relief, he grumbled. Then came Marcus's voice, smooth, amused, dripping with a certainty that froze my stylus midair. Cassandra? Oh, she does the whole independent woman performance too. Puts up a fight, gives her little speeches. He chuckled, and the sound felt like frost on my skin. But she always bends, every single time. I don't even have to worry about it anymore. It's just who she is, my peacekeeper. A beat of silence, then Leo's admiring chuckle. Man, you've got this system perfected. It's not a system, Marcus corrected, and I could hear the smug smile. It's understanding your partner's nature. My nature. He said it like it was immutable, like my tendency to yield was as inherent as my brown eyes or my love for charcoal sketching. Not 1,000 conscious choices to keep the peace, to feel loved, to avoid the exhausting chill of his displeasure. The memory of his touch from the previous night, a possessive hand on my waist as he fell asleep, suddenly felt like a brand, not a caress. It was a touch that assumed ownership, not partnership. I sat there conducting a brutal audit of our 11 years, the lake house in Chillin he had to have, though I dreaded the endless maintenance, the promotion to senior partner at my firm I'd quietly declined because it required monthly trips to New York, and Marcus had said, "We'd never see each other. Is your career really worth that?" He'd slowly redecorated my office into his auxiliary gym, my art supplies migrating to a dusty closet. "We need to maximize space, babe," he'd said, kissing my forehead, a kiss that felt less like affection and more like a seal on a negotiated surrender. That evening, he performed the sacred ritual, the careful grind of coffee beans for my morning cup, the precise line of 3 vitamins on the counter, the prepared steel-cut oats in the fridge. For years, I'd seen it as love. Now I watched his practiced movements and saw a programmer maintaining a reliable piece of software, a kept thing. When he reached for my favorite mug, I spoke. "Don't." He paused, genuinely confused. "It's just your morning routine." "Not tonight," I said, my voice a calm, foreign thing in the warm kitchen. "I've got it." At 4 a.m., I moved through the silent, moon-washed kitchen like a ghost in my own home. I unplugged the coffee maker, I returned each vitamin to its bottle, I emptied the oats back into their canister. The click of the lid was the loudest sound in the world. Then I took my architect's drafting pencil and wrote on a crisp white note card. "Marcus, I heard you today. You were right. I did always bends. Past tense. Make your own breakfast. I'll make mine when I'm ready. We'll talk tonight. Dash C." I propped it against the machine. The old Cassie would have agonized over the tone, would have added a heart to soften it. This Cassie did not. I went back to bed and fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. The first in years. The gears of my carefully managed life had finally, mercifully, ground to a halt. Dawn revealed a new world. I found Marcus in the kitchen, holding the note like it was a live wire. He'd put on his favorite cashmere sweater, the one I'd bought him for our anniversary. A tactic, I realized. A visual cue to remind me of us. "Cassandra," he said, his voice a strained blend of confusion and brewing anger. "This is over a stupid joke with the guys? Really? I walked past him to the pantry, retrieving my own bag of coffee. The simple act felt revolutionary. I'm not upset about a joke, I said, measuring beans into my grinder. The noise filled the charged silence. I'm awake. Awake, he scoffed, the anger winning. To what? You're being incredibly dramatic. I stopped, met his gaze in the reflective surface of the espresso machine. No, Marcus, I'm being specific for the first time. I left without another word, without the usual peck on the cheek that tasted like obligation. My Tesla was a silent cocoon. Before I'd even merged onto I-5, my phone lit up, vibrating against the leather console. Marcus, are you seriously doing this right now? Marcus, you're going to torpedo our marriage over something I said in private. Marcus, this is immature. We need to talk like adults. The old neural pathways fired, anxious, eager to explain, to soothe, to fix the rupture. But a new, stronger circuit had formed overnight. I watched the notifications stack up like clinical data. His panic wasn't empathy, it was the system alert of a primary component failing. The appliance was malfunctioning. At work, I moved through meetings like an automaton. My mind was a courtroom, and I was prosecuting the last decade of my life. Every fine, whatever you want, was entered into evidence. The midday strike came, a call from a Portland area code I didn't recognize. Cassie, hi, it's Chloe. The voice was bright, plastic. Brad's wife, a woman whose Instagram was a highlight reel of marital bliss. I just heard from Brad that you and Marcus are having a little moment. A little moment? The minimization was an art form. Chloe, I said, my tone flat. Listen, honey, Marcus is just devastated. He didn't sleep. He feels like you're twisting a silly comment into something it wasn't. You know how men are in their man caves. It's just locker room talk. It doesn't mean anything about us. I stared at the blueprint on my screen, lines of a future someone else's happy home. Did it sound silly, Chloe? I asked. When you were there, listening, did "she always folds" sound like a joke or a statement of fact? The pause was a confession. Well, I mean, all marriages have their dynamics. Dynamics, yes. Ours was me dynamically folding. Another pause, heavier. He loves you so much, Cassie. Are you really willing to throw away 11 years over this? The script was so predictable, it was tragic. They'd all compared notes. Chloe, if asking to be respected feels like throwing it away, then maybe what we had wasn't worth keeping. I ended the call and blocked the number. The lack of guilt that followed wasn't emptiness. It was pure, unadulterated space. Space for me to breathe. That evening, the loft was a museum of tension. He'd ordered Thai food, my favorites, Panang curry, another tactical move. We ate at opposite ends of the reclaimed wood table, the silence screaming. He broke it first, deploying stage one, the strategic apology. I'm sorry you got hurt, he said, not looking at me. A classic, the apology that holds the other person's feelings responsible. Try again, I said, taking a deliberate bite of rice. Apologize for what you did. His jaw hardened. He was used to his first volley being enough. Fine, I'm sorry for what I said. I didn't mean to disrespect you. Do you respect me? The question hung in the air, simple and devastating. Of course I do, his voice rose. Then why tell your friends you don't have to worry about my needs because I'll cave? Explain the logic of that respect to me. He threw his hands up, the image of a reasonable man besieged. Because it's true, Cass, but not in some malicious way. You're the reasonable one. You're the peacekeeper. That's a good thing. There it was, the breathtaking, unvarnished truth. He didn't deny the dynamic. He just framed his exploitation as a compliment to my character. The intimacy of his misunderstanding was more violating than any secret text message. He knew me, and what he knew was how to use me. The silence after his peacekeeper comment wasn't empty. It was a laboratory where every past interaction was being dissected under a new, unforgiving light. His words hung between us, not as an apology, but as a thesis statement on our marriage. I set my fork down with a quiet, deliberate click. So let's test that theory, I said, my voice clinical. Give me one example from this past year where you were the peacekeeper, where you folded for my peace. His eyes darted, accessing a mental file that he was realizing might be blank. I could see the frantic search, the vacation, the car purchase, the holiday plans. The The bedroom, he finally declared, a flash of triumph in his eyes. You wanted to repaint it that dark, moody navy. I thought it would feel like a cave, but I let you do it. I didn't blink. You let me after arguing for 3 weeks that it was a terrible idea, after I presented color psychology studies and mood boards, after you sighed every time you walked in for a month? That's not you folding, Marcus. That's you reluctantly conceding after an exhaustive campaign, making your displeasure so palpable the victory tasted like ash. That's you ensuring I'd think twice before asking for anything again. The triumph evaporated. His shoulders tensed beneath the cashmere. He was an engineer by trade. He respected data, and I was presenting an irrefutable log of failures. You're rewriting history, he accused, but the charge was weak. No, I'm reading the actual blueprint, not the glossy brochure. The next 3 days were a cold war fought in whispers and avoided spaces. We moved through our open concept loft like satellites in decaying orbits, careful not to collide. The shared bathroom became a tense negotiation of timing. I took showers at night, he commandeered the mornings. The king-sized bed felt vast, a tundra of high thread count cotton, where we each clung to our respective edges, the space between us charged with a new frigid energy. The absence of his habitual sleep-seeking touch, the heavy arm thrown over my waist, was more profound than any argument. He tried to break the stalemate on Thursday night. I was sketching, the soft graphite sounds my only company. How long is this going to last? His voice came from the doorway, a blend of weariness and simmering frustration. I didn't look up. Is there a timeline on basic respect I should be aware of? You know what I mean, this distance. I'm right here, I said, finally meeting his gaze. I'm just not performing. That's the distance you feel. He entered the room, a tactical advance. What do you want from me, Cass? A signed affidavit? I said I was sorry. I want you to want a partner, not a pacifier, I said, closing my sketchbook. Let's run a live test. Weariness clouded his face. What kind of test? I'm booking a 4-day solo hiking trip, the enchantments in the Alpine Lakes Wilderness, next month. The reaction was instantaneous, visceral. His posture stiffened. Solo? Why? That's extreme. Couples do things together. We could make it a romantic thing, a cabin. I don't want a cabin, I interrupted, calm as the eye of the storm I was creating. I want a tent. I want solitude. I want to hear my own thoughts without them being a quiet hum under the volume of us. This is because of what you said. It was an accusation. This is informed by what you said, I corrected. It revealed a truth. I've lost my voice in this duet. I need to go somewhere quiet to find it. He crossed his arms, a physical barricade. And if I'm not comfortable with my wife wandering alone in the wilderness, then we have a fundamental problem because my comfort, my need for this, doesn't seem to factor into your calculation. This is the test, Marcus. I am telling you I need this, not asking for permission. Will you support it? He faltered. The script didn't have a line for this. In our old dynamic, this is where I'd see his discomfort and soften, offer a compromise, fold. I held his gaze, steady. The silence stretched, thin and taut. I need to think about it, he finally said, the words a retreat. I nodded slowly, a scientist noting a result. That's what I thought you'd say. What does that mean? It means, I said, walking past him toward the bedroom, that my autonomy is still a committee decision in which I hold the minority vote. Good to know where we stand. His next move was one of profound miscalculation. The following morning, I entered the kitchen to find the old religion resurrected. The rich smell of my single-origin coffee filled the air. My vitamins were in a perfect line. A bowl of sliced mango and yogurt waited. He leaned against the counter, attempting nonchalant. I thought we could start fresh today, a clean slate. My heart didn't flutter, my guilt didn't stir. All I felt was a cold, clear recognition of the maneuver. This wasn't kindness, it was behavioral conditioning, a reward offered for a return to compliance. I didn't sigh or explain. I walked past the offering, opened the refrigerator, and pulled out the eggs and spinach. I set a pan on the stove I chose on the burner I preferred. "What are you doing?" he asked, confusion edging into frustration. "Making breakfast," I said, cracking an egg. The sizzle was emphatic. "You already have one," he gestured to his constructed peace offering. "I didn't ask for that one," I replied, my voice devoid of malice. Simple fact. The air left the room. "Are you really going to do this?" he whispered, the mask slipping to reveal raw disbelief. You're just going to reject a peace offering?" I turned to face him, the spatula in my hand feeling more like a scepter than a tool. "This isn't a peace offering, Marcus. It's a restoration offer. You're not trying to build something new with me. You're trying to restore the old version from backup. That version is corrupted. She's gone." I saw it then, deep in his eyes. Not just anger, but the first tremor of real fear. It wasn't fear of losing me, the complex, breathing woman. It was the terror of a system architect watching his most elegant, dependable system fail beyond repair. And in that fear, I found not cruelty, but my first solid footing on new ground. Fear, I learned, makes people reckless. Marcus's fear of losing control manifested not in tenderness, but in escalation. He decided to force a return to normalcy by staging it in public. "The Wrights are having their summer solstice party Saturday," he announced Friday evening, his tone artificially light. "Black tie. I already RSVP'd yes for us." It was a masterstroke. The Wrights were his most important clients. Their eco-luxury development was his firm's flagship project. Saying no would be career-damaging. It was also a venue where I'd always performed flawlessly, the charming, supportive wife who laughed at his jokes and gracefully deflected invasive questions about when we'd start a family. The old Cassie would have sighed and slipped into the prescribed role. The new one saw the trap. "You RSVP'd without consulting me," I noted, not looking up from my book. "It's a major client event, Cass. It's not a consultation thing, it's a requirement." "My attendance at a social function is never a requirement of your job," I replied, turning a page. "It's a courtesy I provide, one you've just revoked by making it a decree." He walked into my line of sight, his posture tense. "What are you saying? You're not going?" "I didn't say that," I said, finally meeting his eyes. "I'm saying you don't get to tell me I am. You can ask." The muscle in his jaw pulsed. I watched the internal battle, concede and ask or double down. His need for public victory won. "Fine. Will you accompany me to the Wrights' party on Saturday?" I let the silence hang, just a second too long. "I'll think about it." The fury that flashed in his eyes was pure, uncut. I had taken his power play and not just deflected it, but turned it into a demonstration of my new agency. I did go to the party, but I went as a witness, not a performer. I wore an emerald green gown I'd bought for myself, not one he'd selected for me. I drank sparkling water, not the champagne he kept trying to hand me. And when Richard Wright, a man with hands like a lumberjack and the demeanor of a king, clapped Marcus on the back and said, "This one's still keeping you in line, Marcus?" I didn't smile demurely. I took a small sip of water and said with a pleasant, curious tone, "What an interesting phrase, Richard. Keep in line. It makes marriage sound like managing livestock, not a partnership, don't you think?" The jovial crowd around us froze for a microsecond. Richard's wife, Celeste, hid a sudden cough in her napkin. Marcus's grip on my elbow tightened, a warning squeeze that now felt pathetic, not powerful. "Just a figure of speech, my dear," Richard boomed, recovering. "Of course. Language is so revealing, isn't it? It shows our subconscious frameworks." I gently, unmistakably extracted my arm from Marcus's grasp. "If you'll excuse me, I must admire Celeste's orchid collection." I walked away, leaving a pocket of stunned silence behind me. It was a small, precise detonation. For the rest of the night, I floated through the crowd, engaging in genuine conversation about art and architecture. I saw Marcus watching me from across rooms, a stranded look on his face. I was no longer an extension of him in the space. I was my own celestial body, and my new orbit was disorienting him. The car ride home was a deep freeze. He waited until our garage door shut, sealing us in a tomb of concrete and tension. "What the hell was that?" he hissed, not even turning off the ignition. "An observation. You humiliated me in front of my most important client." "No," I said calmly, unclipping my seatbelt. "You humiliated yourself by laughing at a joke that framed your wife as a domesticated animal. I merely declined to join in the laughter. There's a difference." "You are trying to destroy me." His voice was low, shaking. "I am refusing to be destroyed by you," I corrected. "Piece by piece, compliance by compliance. That ends now." He walked into the house, his rage filling the high ceilings. "You think this is strength? This stubbornness? This is you being a brittle, miserable—" I whirled around. "Finish that sentence," I challenged, my voice quiet and deadly. "Call me the names you've been thinking. Call me a bitch. Call me cold. Do it. Let's hear the truth you've been polishing behind your peacekeeper compliments." He stopped, breath ragged, the word hanging unsaid in the air between us. To say it would be to make the covert overt, to acknowledge the war. He couldn't do it. Instead, he deflated. "I don't know who you are anymore." "Good," I said, my heart a steady, unfeeling drum in my chest. "Maybe you'll bother to find out this time." The following week, he tried a new, desperate tactic: faux vulnerability. He came home with tickets to the symphony, a show he'd always dismissed as boring. He suggested we cook together, something we hadn't done since our first apartment. He left a single gardenia, my mother's favorite flower, not mine, on my pillow. Each gesture was a clue and a scavenger hunt for the old Cassie, each one missing the mark because they were based on a superficial catalog of wife, not a deep knowledge of me. They were scripts from a play that had closed. His inability to see the difference was the final, definitive proof of our disconnect. I began sleeping in the guest room. The act wasn't punitive, it was logistical. I needed space to think. To him, it was a nuclear strike. "So that's it?" he asked, standing in the doorway of the serene gray room I'd made my own. "You're just giving up?" "I'm not giving up," I said, folding a sweater. "I'm stepping onto neutral ground. This marriage has been conducted on your territory for 11 years. I'm establishing a demilitarized zone." His face crumpled, but the emotion seemed disconnected, like watching a sad movie. "I miss my wife." I looked at him, this man I had loved, had built a life with, had slowly allowed to erase me for. "I miss her too," I said, and the truth of it was a clean, sharp pain. "But she's gone, and you're the one who told her she wasn't necessary." Victory in war isn't always a parade. Sometimes it's just a silence after the last shot echoes and you realize you're still standing, and the flag you're holding is your own. My victory didn't come with an apology or a grand romantic gesture. It came on a Tuesday morning over zoning laws. Marcus stood in the kitchen, a blueprint from my studio in his hands. He'd been tidying. "This addition for the Larson project," he said, pointing with the contractor's pencil. "The setback here is wrong. The city code is 30 feet. You've drafted 25. It'll never get approved." It was my most complex, cherished residential project, a year of work, and he was right. I'd made an error. The old Cassie would have felt a hot wave of shame, would have deferred to his expertise, would have muttered, "You're right, thank you for catching it," and felt small. I took the blueprint from his hands. I examined my own line. "You're correct," I said, my voice even. "Thank you for the quality check. I'll revise it before the submission." I turned back to my laptop, ready to continue. He just stood there, waiting. "Was there something else?" I asked. He blinked. I just saved you a major headache, a potential client disaster." "You did," I nodded, and I acknowledged it and thanked you. "Is there a further action required?" He was waiting for the emotional cascade, the self-flagellation, the "I'm so stupid, how did I miss that? What would I do without you?" that would reestablish the hierarchy, that would make him the hero and me the grateful damsel. It didn't come. I had accepted a professional correction without accepting a personal diminishment. The two were now separate in my world. That was the moment I saw his understanding truly dawn. It wasn't anger in his eyes anymore or fear. It was a kind of bleak, exhausted recognition. The game was over, and the rules had changed so fundamentally he no longer knew how to move on the board. "What do you want, Cassandra?" he asked, his voice stripped of all pretense. It was the first real question he'd asked me in years. "I want a divorce," I said. The words were calm, clear, and unsurprising even to me. They weren't born of anger, but of final forensic analysis. He didn't fight. He didn't plead. He just sagged against the kitchen island, looking at the woman he no longer knew. Because of what I said to my friends? No, I corrected gently, because of the 11 years of evidence that proved it was true. That comment was just the key that unlocked the door to the room where all the evidence was stored. We sold the loft. The division of assets was clinical, mediated by two excellent lawyers who spoke in acronyms and percentages. There was no fight over the records or the art. I took my books, my designs, myself. The last morning in the empty space with echoey floors and painted over walls, we stood by the door with our separate sets of keys. He looked older, the clever, confident architect, now a man staring at a blank plot of land. "I am sorry," he said. Not "I'm sorry you" or "I'm sorry if," just "I am sorry." It was the only authentic thing he'd said in months. "I know," I replied. And I did. His sorrow was real. It just came too late to save us, and on time to save me. He nodded, a world of failure in the gesture. "What will you do?" "I've accepted the senior partner position, the one in New York." A flicker of surprise, then resignation. He saw the full arc then, the story of a woman unbending. "You'll be brilliant at it," he said, and for the first time it sounded like respect, not flattery. I walked out into the Seattle sun, the key to my new apartment in Manhattan already a familiar weight in my pocket. Victory wasn't sweetness. It was a quiet, durable solidity. It was the profound understanding that I would never again confuse being managed for being loved or mistake my own silence for peace. My victory was a simple, unshakable thing. I had chosen myself, and in that choice, I had finally come home.